Next up, we have Brad he's the field CTO for APJ at Kong. Hope you're doing well. And he's going to talk a little bit about how we can build and leverage APIs to sustainably reduce digital waste. Over to you, Brad.
Thank you very much and welcome everyone. It's an absolute honor to be here to present to you a topic about how to build and leverage API sustainably to reduce digital waste. Look, climate change has been on the world's agenda for some time now. It's also been on my mind a lot recently. I mean, I have young children, so I find myself far more concerned about this shared planet of ours, especially with the recent run of terrible weather events here in Australia. Bushfires, droughts, water restrictions, floods, and kind of deluges of biblical proportions. And I know Hong Kong has typhoon warnings at the moment as well. It's pretty much similar the world over. And as summer gets ready to come round again in this part of the world, it makes me kind of wonder what next. We know we're consuming more resources than our planet has to offer. We're polluting it, warming it up, burning it, flooding it, and ultimately close to killing everything on it. And we do this mainly by burning fossil fuels to generate electricity that we need to power the things that we want. And it's interesting that IT is increasingly a bigger part of the problem. Within the next 10 years, it is predicted that 21% of all the energy consumed in the world will be by IT. Our mandates to digitally transform mean we're patting ourselves on the back, celebrating new ways that we delight our customers, fueled by electricity guzzled from things our planet can't afford to give. And still, 85% of the world's electricity is fossil-based. It does beg the question posed to all of us: how much is your digital transformation costing future generations? So what do we do? This isn't about the steps we take at home to be a good citizen, like recycling or turning off appliances when not in use, or even choosing where to invest our money. This is about the way we architect our systems, how we leverage the network to shuffle data around, and how we get our digital jobs done, all whilst ensuring we do well by dear Mother Earth. It's been said for a very long time that change is the only constant. It's a very familiar concept here in IT. I mean, how many times have you heard or used the term digital transformation? It's all about change, ongoing change, radically changing how we build applications, deploy applications, embrace them, and consume them, and delight the digital audiences that they serve. In fact, it's likely we've never seen so much change as what we face today. The IT landscape is in a very rapidly changing state, with organizations racing to the cloud, embracing software as a service, using APIs to create new business models, and innovating at a velocity deemed simply impossible only a few short years ago. The result of all this change in IT is that it's very evident that the future of every organization is driven by software, and the future of software is distributed. This change continues at a breathless pace today. Every organization rapidly innovating in the digital space. And consumers are becoming more aware of the social impact of all this change. 85% of customers have in fact shifted their purchasing behavior to prioritize sustainability in the last 5 years. More than a third of customers will actually pay more for products that are sustainable. And as expectations around sustainability climb, companies will face significant pressure to prove their sustainability credentials and continue to make it a central part of their value proposition. While attitudes vary across generations, countries, and industries, 85% of consumers have become greener in their purchasing in the recent years, and that's great news. Because of all this change on the IT landscape, as a result, application design is evolving to support it. We're seeing traditional monolithic applications being broken down, more decoupling, more distribution, more APIs being used in order to interconnect these finer grained components in a more rapid, more innovative fashion. New engineering practices emerge designed to increase the pace of digital innovation and to take advantage of all this change around us. And it's great to see, I'm sure, that APIs and microservices are, not surprisingly, leading the charge in enabling this change. 90% of survey respondents believe that microservices-based applications are the future, and the ability to support distributed applications is critical for success. Likewise, through the same survey, 86% said that organizations unable to ensure the reliability and resiliency of the APIs that connect microservice-based applications are more likely to lose market share to competitors who can. So it's an awesome time to be a developer, an innovator, and of course, a digital citizen. However, bringing this back to the topic at hand, climate change is also constant. With everyone racing to the cloud, the pressure is now on the cloud providers themselves to do a better job in terms of sustainability and impact. The top 10 largest cloud providers accounted for 70% of all IT spending on cloud infrastructure, according to Gartner. Cloud sustainability initiatives will start with leading cloud providers, which are some of the world's largest data center operators and critical to reducing IT-related carbon emissions. While essentially all cloud providers have sustainability initiatives in place, their progress in meeting carbon reduction goals and strategies for achieving net zero carbon emissions varies wildly. As well as racing to the cloud, we're very rapidly creating and leveraging more APIs, which is awesome. I'm not going to claim that APIs prevent climate change. No single thing actually does, although switching away from fossil fuels would be a very good start. What I am going to claim is that they do have a role to play, and we need to make technical and architectural decisions with this in mind. Consider that Cisco estimates that the global web traffic in 2021 exceeded 2.8 zettabytes. That equates to 21 trillion MP3 songs, or about 2,658 songs for every single person on the planet. It's almost 3 times the number of stars in the observable universe. It's also 560 times the number of all words ever spoken by human beings ever. And now consider that 83% of this traffic is through APIs. APIs have a very big role to play. Building better APIs isn't just good for the planet and our consciences, it's good for our businesses too. The more we can architect to reduce energy consumption, the more we can reduce our costs as well as our impact. So in the context of APIs, what are the things that we should have in mind when we're building and leveraging them? Well, it all starts with design and planning. APIs must be well designed in the first place, useful to the business outcome, and intentionally designed for discovery and reuse. This we already know. We should also be ensuring each API does its job efficiently. So, for example, sending 100 fields of data when most of the time consumers only use the top 10 means that we're wasting resources. We'd be sending 90 unused and unhelpful bits of data every time someone calls that API. So maybe at the design phase, we should consider 2 versions of that API, a simple customer API and a detailed customer API. Maybe also consider using GraphQL or gRPC or other means to more efficiently transport only the relevant data across that API when it's invoked. Efficiency matters, and from a design, usage, data transmission, and also from a protocol perspective used to support those APIs. By 2025, the carbon emissions of the hyperscale cloud services will be the top 3 criterion in cloud purchasing decisions, once again, according to Gartner. So where you choose to deploy your APIs and microservices can actually really make a difference. Code needs to be efficient, something fortunately already prioritized, as a slow API makes for a bad experience anyway. But think about optimizing for energy consumption as well as performance. For example, an efficient service polling for updates every 10 seconds will be worse than an efficient service that pushes updates when there are some. Deployment targets also matter. Cloud vendors have significant R&D budgets to make their energy consumption as low as possible, budgets that no other company would be prepared to invest in their own data centers. However, with the annual electricity usage of the big five tech companies, thinking Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and Apple, more or less the same as the entirety of New Zealand's energy consumption, it's not as simple as just moving to the cloud and job done. Just how renewable are their energy resources? The more cloud vendors see this as a factor in your evaluation of their services, the more we compel them to prioritize sustainability as well as efficiency. Perhaps consider an efficient API gateway. Consider a service mesh as ways to optimize and reduce the network traffic that we use. Leverage containers and orchestration platforms like Kubernetes to auto-scale or burst the deployment footprint for traffic peaks, so we have less sitting around idle the rest of the time. And we can reduce the size of individual VMs to maximize utilizations and can therefore consume less energy. Containers are a great way to do this. And for example, Nordstrom's in the US increased CPU utilization from 4% to 40% when they containerized their applications and adopted Kubernetes. Service mesh products come with policies out of the box to give you further traffic control, such as circuit breaking, preventing unnecessary messages being sent around the network when a service is not available. And then finally, to manage and observe. Policies in API gateways exist today, like rate limiting and caching, to control how many requests a client can make in any given period and most efficiently service them. Broad observability gives control over what's running, how it's running, and insights needed to optimize and right-size our API architecture. Are there lots of requests for APIs coming from a different continent to where that API is hosted? Consider redeploying the API local to reduce the demand for global network traffic. Are there unused APIs sitting there idle? Consider decommissioning them to reduce your footprint. Is there a performance bottleneck? Investigate the cause, and if appropriate, consider refactoring the API implementation to be more efficient. API management is one of the necessary tools for reducing the carbon footprint of your API estate. Its sole purpose is to give you visibility and control over your APIs and how they're consumed, which greatly impacts their overall energy consumption. When you use an API management platform that is itself efficient and reduces your infrastructure footprint, you're in a much better position to ensure your APIs are built and managed with sustainability in mind. So there's areas across the full API lifecycle, which when carefully considered, can result in overall API success and benefits in terms of sustainability and ultimately our careful use of our planet's finite resources. Beyond your own APIs, there are increasingly many companies offering APIs that can make existing products and services greener. For example, by assessing or offsetting your carbon emissions, you embed these into your own workflows to provide greener services to yourselves and your customers. One such example is Patch, which offers API-first carbon removal, an API that enables businesses to programmatically calculate their emissions and immediately offset them by investing in a range of vetted projects. Shopify, for example, the e-commerce platform, offers carbon offsets in the Offset app to both merchants and buyers to offset the emissions from shipping their packages. They do this by embedding services from Pachama into the buying workflow, a carbon offsetting company that uses AI and machine learning on satellite observations to measure carbon captured in forests and map how it changes over time, as well as conserving and restoring those forests. It's important to note here that we need to do more than just compensate for our own emissions. It's a better starting point than doing nothing, And offsetting emissions means we just counter in one place the damage we do elsewhere, resulting in a net zero ecosystem in which we don't make things worse overall. It's not the same as reducing our emissions in the first place and actually making things better. There are other examples too. APIs we can use to enhance our own workflows, both internal and external, to make them greener. Tomorrow.io provides highly accurate weather forecast APIs to help businesses better inform their operations. An airline, for example, could use these APIs to understand how much fuel to carry based upon upcoming weather forecasts. Emissions API provides global satellite observed emissions data to drive better, more impactful climate-focused programs, like a 3D visualizer of carbon monoxide concentrations across the planet. And Uplight provides data through APIs to help accelerate decarbonisation programs through smart energy usage and measurement. These are just a few examples of countless APIs you can find yourself online. But innovation doesn't stop there. A staggering $87.5 billion was invested globally in climate tech in 2021. And it now accounts for 14 cents in every venture capital dollar. So this is a rapidly growing and an incredibly exciting domain. We have all the green building blocks ready for us to innovate on top of. The missing ingredient is you. That idea you had a few months ago, the hackathon you're planning, the conference talk you're inspired by. What will you create? Consumers are increasingly demanding greener alternatives and turning towards environmentally aware companies. 50% of consumers now rank sustainability as a top 5 value driver. It's not just an ethical decision to be more sustainable, it's now a business one. We have an opportunity to innovate and develop the solutions. We have a growing expectation from our customers to provide sustainable products. Let's use our technical experience and creativity to do just that. And then there's the APIs you build to power your business in a sustainable fashion. How you design them, deploy them, and manage them in a sustainable, ethical fashion. APIs exist to help you do that. Cloud providers exist with big investment in sustainability to help you in your efforts through supporting our planet. And the broader API economy, as you've seen from some of those previous examples, is armed and ready to help. So whether you're motivated by your own conscience or motivated by the fact that being more efficient means higher profits for your business, the planet is asking two things of you, of us. Acknowledge and accept that there is a problem, not just that global warming exists, but that IT is a large and growing part of the problem. By 2030, it's predicted that 21% of all energy consumed in the world will be by IT. Energy that is still, for the very vast majority, generated from fossil fuels today. The internet accounts for 3.7% of global carbon emissions, which is only slightly more than aviation. And aviation is already known to be a huge producer of carbon emissions. And we all know we need to fly less. Why don't we think about how we build and use technology with the same level of guilt? The second thing we ask is change. Take action. You don't even need to stand up. The next time you're building or versioning an API, build it following green engineering principles. The next time you're breaking down a monolith into microservices, minimize the microservice traffic. Remove unnecessary network hops. Consider the use of a service mesh. Bring this up in discussion sessions and architectural review boards. Educate your colleagues and do more of your own research as well. Sitting here behind our laptop screens, it's really easy to feel quite far removed from the impact of climate change. We happily switch between Google Drive, iCloud, and various SaaS applications, and upteam different applications that we use on a day-to-day basis, often without even thinking about their impact on the planet. Thanks to privacy concerns, we have a growing awareness of how and where our data is transferred, stored, and shared. But most of us do not have that same instinctive thought process when we think about carbon emissions rather than trust. So it's time to make this our default behavior. It's time to accept, brainstorm, and challenge each other that as technologists, perhaps there are better ways for us to build applications and connect systems than we've previously considered. What I've shared here, I think, is probably just the starting point. Right now, big oil has a deservedly bad rep when it comes to climate change. Unless we take the right action, it could be us next. As we digitize, we need to think and make sure we're not the industry, the next big industry, causing the problem. So thank you, and here's to a greener future for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. What an insightful and quite sobering presentation about how we can make our APIs more sustainable and about climate change as a whole. I want to ask, you mentioned a lot of different things that we can do to make our APIs more sustainable and more efficient. Out of those that you mentioned, or maybe another one, what do you think is the most important thing that we can do right now to make our APIs more efficient and more sustainable?
I think the top two would probably be, on your journey to the cloud, really consider the green credentials of the clouds that you choose. They burn an incredible amount of energy, but they can be very efficient. And I think a lot of the competitive differentiation between the big cloud platform providers will be based around their green credentials. I think the other one is efficiency. Thinking about, not only does the API that you design and build and deploy in an efficient way doesn't meet the requirements of the business first and foremost, and then secondary to that is, are you building it in the most efficient fashion so that you're taking advantage of the network, the protocols you're using, the API gateway infrastructure to protect and control and measure those APIs? Are you using all the best of those platforms and those architectures and those efficiencies to ensure that you only transmit the data that's necessary to meet the outcome, rather than just assuming that bandwidth and power and capability is infinite?
Right. Thank you. I also know that as someone who interacts with a lot of influential people in this space, do you feel that there is an increasing interest in making more efficient and more sustainable APIs? Do you feel like it's heading in a good direction? And maybe do you have some examples of that?
I think it's starting to become more well accepted, and it is heading in the right direction. I've spoken to many customers who their brand has green credentials and a strategy around climate change that they're trying to march towards. It generally focuses on the energy efficiency of other areas of their business operations, like their offices, logistics and supply chain, how ethically they produce the products and ship it and get it into the customer's hands. And today, what I think we're highlighting is that needs to extend into the digital assets as well, how they're building their APIs, how they're exposing products and services over those APIs to various different digital channels, and how they're servicing and delighting customers on those digital channels with their green credentials very tightly assigned to those as well.
Yeah. And very briefly, you mentioned about these green credentials. Maybe for the people that are not familiar, can you clarify what you mean by that?
So green credentials here, we're talking about how much energy you're using and what's the impact of the consumption of that energy on downstream effects like carbon production, deforestation, use of fossil fuels, how that energy is produced and how it gets leveraged. So there's not much as technologists that we can do to switch a data center from using fossil-based fuels to wind-based power generation. We can put pressure on the cloud providers to think more ethically about how they generate the power to power the data centers. But we have more that's in our control in terms of how we design, implement our APIs, and how we make sure that we're only running and managing and leveraging infrastructure and network when we need it. That's very much in our wheelhouse and very much in our control. And if IT is going to be potentially the leading consumer of power, electricity resources on the planet, then every bit of data that we transfer across the network, every API call that we power with CPU and memory will matter. And so we need to make sure that we're efficiently using the resources that we have.
Thank you very much, Brad. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you for your presentations and thank you for your answers as well. Have a good day. Thank you.